Folkies. I quite often get requests for recommendations of good albums of Scandinavian folk music. People who would like to listen more to nyckelharpa, hardingfele, fiddle, other instruments, and the traditional music from this big region of the world. And so, as announced in a previous video, I'm starting a new series of videos which is called Scandi Folk Albums, so I will recommend to you my favorite albums. Of course I cannot include all albums of all artists, but I will just talk about the ones that for me are the best ones or that I listen to the most. And I'm starting already with 3 of my absolute favorite albums, which for me are really essentials and that focus on different instruments as well. The first album I want to talk about is Bestastovo, released in 2018 by GKN5. And under this weird code is the name Guro Kviftenesheim Quintet. Guro is a young and very promising hardingfele player from Norway. She has had the luck of studying with Salve Austeno, who was one of the last traditional hardingfele masters, and she decided to start a band with her favorite musicians. So she got Anna Gustafsson on nyckelharpa, Anna Malmström on clarinet and bass clarinet, jajamän, Thomas Eriksson on guitar and Nordic cittern, and Jens Linnell on percussion, especially tambourine. And it's hard to express how much I love this CD, how much it's been a blast for me to listen to it the first time and all the many times afterwards. What I find particularly well done in this album is that, well, it's mostly traditional hardingfele repertoire, so solo repertoire. And here it's a quintet, so 5 people, which is quite a lot for the folk scene. At least here in Scandinavia, we often have duos, maybe trios, but more is really rare. But they still managed to keep the very solo feeling of hardingfele, and the other instruments, although you can hear them very clearly, they are more like carrying the hardingfele. And I mean, they do sometimes have solo parts and this kind of stuff, but you still really clearly hear that the melody instrument, that the instrument that shapes the music is the hardingfele. And still you hear, as said, all other instruments and with their little details. The tambourine is particularly great in my opinion. It really detaches every note, and the nyckelharpa and clarinet very often have other voices or bass lines or even drones sometimes, and it's really well done. I love it because you have all the power of a quintet, so it feels like a big band. You can hear that there is a lot of horses pushing the carriage, somehow pulling the carriage. Still it feels kind of intimate and almost minimalistic because of the simplicity of the arrangements. They are very well crafted, they are detailed, but they always give the most part to the melody, kinda, except when sometimes they do go a bit crazy, but not that often. To me, this is an album with its crooked rhythms and very often very modal harmonies, Norway, Lydian, and this kind of stuff, that really carries me in a floating manner. Somehow I feel like flying or something. It's very solar, it's very full of light, and it's very open as well. It gives me a feeling of grandiose nature or something. And the last tune on the CD, which is Bestastovo, composed by Guro, is, in my humble opinion, the best tune, because it's very calm, it's very simple, you really have to relax into the tune, but it carries you flying over fjords or something by a beautiful night of summer, or something in this idea. The band has released another album in 2020, Tre hjerter på en snor. I have listened to it as well. It's a bit more bigger sound, but it's also super beautiful. I basically recommend it a lot as well. If you prefer a bit more minimalistic, the first one is more in that direction, and if you prefer a bit more quintet feeling, then the second one. But both are really great. The second album is Finnskogen Brinner from 2007, so quite a while ago already, by Patrik, Andersson and Vegar Vårdal. And this album, I mean this duo in general. Patrik has been my teacher and he's one of my absolute favorite musicians because he has such a distinct style. He can play pretty much everything, but you always hear it's Patrik. I mean, I can hear in 5 seconds that it's him. He has very specific bowings and also intonation that is micro-intonation, very sharp, very precise, beautiful. Vegar is a little bit less known to me, but I've had short contacts with him here and there, and he's an amazing musician. He has so much fire in his playing, and he can play everything, and you can hear that he has explored different genres. You can hear a bit of like improvisation here and there in some tunes, but mostly this album is a lot about fiddles and about the repertoire of Finnskogen. So this is an area in between Sweden and Norway, so on the border, but more like in the south. But what is even greater than just repertoire and good tunes is that Patrik and Vegar really feel like they're having fun. They're not just playing old tunes from a region. They have arranged them in ways that are just full of fun and laughter somehow. You can really feel that these two guys have found each other musically wise and they're just playing around. I know by Patrik that some of the improvisations or parts were not like planned, they just happened. And they also have tunes in common that they don't really know who of them composed because they just played together and the tune happened. Of course, it doesn't harm that it's also one of my favorite areas in terms of repertoire, so you have lots of crooked polskas, Finnskogspols, which are from this area, but also other types of tunes, and always with these beautiful arrangements. I mean, it's 2 fiddles for the most part, a little bit of hardingfele and viola, but very little. It's mostly just fiddles. And it's never screechy, it's never flat, it's never boring, it's always quick and light and sometimes dark, but always full of, I don't know, details, and they have dynamics that are so rich and never feeling like aggressive nor flat nor shy. It's always brilliant, really, really brilliant. The duo has also released in 2016 Grådask Gråvær, which is more of a personal album somehow, so they have more of their own compositions and a bit crazier arrangements, but it's really in the same style. I presented Finnskogen Brinner because it's more like traditional somehow, so I thought that it was more appropriate to my videos somehow. But really, Grådask Gråvær is also absolutely gorgeous. And in 2020, they have also released 1700, which is, as the name indicates, a dive into the music from 1700s. I haven't really listened to it yet, but I can bet all my money and more, not my instruments though, that it's a very, very good album. Basically, this duo, just follow them. Just follow both of the guys into all the projects. I will probably talk about them more in future videos because they're so good. And last but not least, I would like to talk more about nyckelharpa stuff. So the third album is by Josefina Paulson and David Eriksson, and it's called Kontra. It has been officially released online in 2020, but I'm absolutely certain that it was available a few years prior in physical form, because I've listened to it before last year. It's an album that is dedicated to kontrabasharpa. In case you don't know that, kontrabasharpa is an older model of nyckelharpa, and it has nothing to do with double bass, kontrabass in Swedish, but it just means that the 2 melody strings are against the bass string, so kontrabasen. This instrument is not really well known today, and it's not much played. It's quoted usually when you talk about the history of nyckelharpa, but there are very few people, especially young people, who play it. And David is quite of a strong advocate for the kontrabasharpa, and I guess that's probably why he recorded the CD. And I mean, it does its job very well. I was not really interested in kontrabasharpa, but since I've listened to the CD so many times and still do quite often, I would really like to get a kontrabasharpa at some point. There are very few builders, David is one of them, but I don't really know about others. Most of the kontrabasharpor that are found today are from older builders, so they are not new instruments, but second-hand instruments. The album is really great also if someone wants to start their journey into nyckelharpa world somehow, because they have varied a lot the type of tunes that they play. So they've picked tunes from northern Sweden, southern Sweden, a bit here and there, and although it's just 2 old type nyckelharpas playing together, it's again, never boring. It's really good arrangements. It's detailed ornaments. It's often quite dark and even heavy at times, but it's never like heavy in a bad way. It's heavy in a rock way. And for me, it's a very, very good example that nyckelharpa is not just a delicate and elegant instrument. It can be, but if that's your only vision of the instrument, well, that's a very good album to change that. Josefina and David are amongst the best players of the instrument nowadays, and they really demonstrate that nyckelharpa is rock as heck, and that you can make, even on old models like the contrabass harpa, very crazy arrangements, and you can make it so rock and so appealing to modern ears somehow. So whether you are a nyckelharpa nerd, or starting your journey with nyckelharpa, or you're just interested in old instruments, or would just like to get a glimpse of Swedish repertoire in general, well, definitely give a listen to this album. It's really, really great. So I hope you get intrigued by these albums. I put all the links to get these albums physically or find them on iTunes or Spotify in the description below. I highly recommend you to get albums in physical copies. Still, I know CDs are pretty much dying out now, and some albums are even not even edited in physical version anymore, but many still are, and it's really a better way to support artists, because maybe you don't know that, but streaming services as iTunes and especially Spotify are not super good at paying their artists, not super good at all. And an artist gets much more money if you buy the actual physical copy, because there is not all the line of intermediaries in between the artist and the physical product that you consume. Also, I think that sometimes they can provide lots of nerdy little infos in the jacket, and also about the musicians themselves. It's nice to hold something in your hands, and I'm not fully trusting the digital support, I have to say, nor the internet. Maybe that's due to the fact that here in my Swedish countryside we have internet cuts fairly often, but no matter what, I think it's a good thing if you can afford, if the postage is not too high and this kind of stuff, to buy a physical copy when there is one, when it's possible. As always, also just support the artist by liking them, by sharing the music that you love, talking about them, recommending them to friends and this kind of stuff. It always helps artists a lot. So these are for the albums of today. There will be more coming in future videos. Let me know in the comments if you have specific recommendations for me. I'm on the lookout for more Scandinavian music, of course, but also other types of traditional music. I'm especially interested into Baltic music at the moment and Balkan music, but also every country, every part of the world is interesting for me. Asian countries, I know literally nothing about their folk music, so I would love to get recommendations of good projects. So let me know in the comments, let me know if you knew of these projects or these musicians, and also what you think about them, if you've listened to them already, or go get a listen and then come back and leave a comment or something. Remember that the algorithm is still not very nice to small channels, so liking, subscribing, this kind of stuff on YouTube, you know how it goes, please do that. And here I've been only talking, but usually I'm a musician. I play fiddle and nyckelharpa, which I'm not gonna take here because it's a bit heavier. But I make music too, and I make nerdy videos about Scandinavian music, so if you think that's worth supporting, you can do so on Patreon, link in the description. That is all for me today. I hope it was a nice video to watch, and I will see you next time. Hej då!